Hey, what's up guys? Matt here, coming to you from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So today we're going to be reviewing and talking about the RoadGlide and StreetGlideST. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button to follow along the most comprehensive Harley-Davidson content channel on YouTube. So let's jump right into it. We had an awesome day. We took these bikes out to Ortega Highway. After Ortega Highway, we took them down to PCH and we did some cruising through all the beach cities in southern Orange County, all the way up to Huntington Beach, where we stopped off at Sancho's and did some watching on PCH.
So Matt and I just got done through the weekend riding around on the two new touring STs, the StreetGlide and the RoadGlideST. I personally had the StreetGlide and then met up with Matt near Ortega Highway to take him up through the canyons. First impressions of the bike as far as visually, if some of you follow the channel, as far as the aesthetics, I had a 2019 RoadGlide in which I pretty much did this same look to it. I powder coated wheels gold. I actually got an ultra limited fender, took out the rear valance, and then did cross bars to it and kind of ran short bags and then a carbon fiber fender up front. So the styling is something I'm really biased to because it's kind of what I had did a couple of years ago, which I really dig that the motor company came out with something similar to that. I love the shorter bags and then the bronze look on the wheels and then matching the paint on the tank is just really, they knocked it out of the park there.
We really wanted to put the lean angle, the suspension, the engine, everything to the test in an environment that really tests what I feel like Harley-Davidson has postured as a performance bagger. I feel that it definitely has the makings of a performance bagger. I feel like performance bagger terminology gets thrown out way too loosely. And although I feel like this can be classified as a performance bagger, I think there's a lot that goes into being a full-blown performance bagger. So I personally would classify the ST models as a good base that could potentially become a performance bagger. So if you're going that direction, this is definitely the bike to buy. But to buy it and say I got a performance bagger, I feel like maybe you're not quite there. There's a lot that can be done to really make it a full-blown performance bagger. Let's talk a little bit about what separates the ST from the other 5 RoadGlide models in the lineup. And really what Andrew and I wanted to do was we wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what differentiates the STs from the other models in the lineup. The StreetGlide has a bunch of different variations of the StreetGlide as well. So the ST, you've got Harley-Davidson's biggest displacement from the factory in the 117 cubic inch. So you've got the exact same power plant that the CVOs have in it, which is a beast. It's a great, powerful bike, powerful engine right out of the box.
First impression on the 117, just for my 16-mile commute on the way home from work, was really impressive. I got on the freeway and specifically this 117 here really loves the higher range RPM. And I'm comparing it to really my 114 stage 4 kit that I have on my personal bike, which is a Road King. That bike was originally a 107 stage 4, bumped it up to 114 with the power cam. And I'm very familiar with that engine. I've put a lot of miles on it. So between the two, these engines here with that configuration as far as the 114 built really loves the high RPMs, and I personally like that. I like revving it out. I do a lot of highway riding, and so in that aspect it's really similar to this 117. Really likes the higher end RPMs. That's kind of where the power band comes in around 4,000 and really pulls you. I mean, from 4,000 on up to 5,500, you really feel that pull from that higher RPM. Amazing. I love it. It's confidence inspiring. Getting this thing really pinned in the corners and being able to accelerate.
I saw you chasing down a couple sport bikes there, man.
Yeah, I couldn't keep up with the BMW, but the R1,
no problem.
He was getting nervous. I was kind of behind him. And he didn't get out of my sight. But no, it was fun, man. This thing is, the engine is awesome. Personally, I do a torque cam to it just to kind of wake up the bottom end. It loves the high rev RPMs, and it screams, man. It's a really good bike.
How's it doing the corners?
Absolutely good. It's awesome. When I got on the Road Glide, we could have afforded to adjust the suspension a little bit because I have the streak light kind of dialed in. So this one's kind of backed out a little bit, so it's a little bit more uneasy.
Yeah.
But man, you keep it. I was second, third gear the whole time, just screaming, man. It's fun.
Road Glide Standard, the Road Glide Special, and then the ST, the Road Glide Limited, and you've also got a CVO Road Glide. And I like to point out too, just because the ST is a little bit more than the Road Glide Special, doesn't necessarily make it the better bike for all applications. I feel like if you're someone that still favors the styling of, we'll call it the big wheel baggers, although the wheels are the same size, but the big wheel baggers have the stretched bags, that lowered slammed look, more of the profiling boulevard cruising appeal to them. If you like that, save yourself some money and go with the Road Glide Special. So the Road Glide Special, you're at about $27,500 depending on how it's equipped. The STs, you're at just a hair under $30,000, so you're about $2,500 more for the ST. But if you get the black finish on the Road Glide or Street Glide Special, that's $930, so you're only about $1,500 more for the ST. So at that point, it kind of becomes a wash. You get the bike that you feel like is going to suit your needs better and your riding habits a little bit better. So, what are those riding habits and style preferences? Because I think style is a big piece to the equation of which direction to go as well. So Harley-Davidson definitely changed it up a little bit as far as styling goes. So they went with a smaller fender on the front, which I think you could say, well, there's some weight savings there, which saving weight is going to be something that you want to do on a performance-oriented bagger, right? I personally feel like it's a little bit more of a style benefit than it is a weight savings, because how much weight did it really save there? Maybe 5-6 pounds. And so you do have the shorter fender in the front, you have the short bags in the rear as well, better lean angle, and if you're running a 2-into-1 pipe, which a lot of these performance bagger guys do, you definitely want the short bags, that way you don't have an empty hole on the left-hand side. You also have the taller shock on the STs, which I think is something that cannot be understated. The taller shock just blazing down the freeway, which I think is probably the strongest suit for this bike, is just getting out on the open road and just rolling on that throttle. And this thing is very comfortable, very stable, very solid out on the road at very high speeds. I think this bike, it does good through the canyons. The rear shock helps out not only in canyon riding and the lean angle and everything, but just blazing out on the highway, which I think the majority of people who buy this bike are probably going to spend more time blazing the highway than they are lean angle to lean angle through the canyons. It does that very, very well. The shock back there, when you compare it to just the standard short shock that comes on the specials for a year, that a lot of people complain about, unfortunately, because it's not the most comfortable ride. It delivers a low seat height and it delivers a low slammed profiling bagger look, but it's not the best shock for purposes of getting out there on the highway and going fast on the freeway, right? Let's talk a little bit about some other features on the ST that make it unique. The rear fender, like Andrew mentioned, you have just a single tail light in the back. On the specials, you have that light in the bottom of the fender. Once again, on the specials, you have a little bit more of a less is more kind of a look. On the STs, you've got the traditional square tail light protruding out of the rear fender there. And the short bags, of course, which changes the tail end of the bike. And with that taller shock back there, you can see that it sits higher as well. So just the stance of the bike is quite a bit different.
Ergonomics of the bike, personally, not the biggest fan of the solo seat. I'm 5'11". I feel like I can sit back maybe a half an inch, but overall the aesthetics of the solo seat looks really cool. I like it. But for me personally, the solo seat doesn't really work with me. I like a 2-step-up seat.
The seat, I personally think that it definitely fits the part of a performance seat. It's a seat that doesn't have a whole lot of cushion on it. It's really firm, and so the inputs in your hips and the movement of your midsection are gonna translate to movement on the bike a lot better than if you had something real squishy and supple as far as the seat goes. But at the same time, you're cruising down the highway and there's not a whole lot there as far as cushion and comfort. And let's be honest, I think most people that buy these touring chassis STs, they're gonna take them out on the road and they're gonna go places and they're gonna travel on them. And so I think I can see a lot of people buying a different seat to be a little bit more comfortable on these seats. I personally feel like too that the back portion of the seat props you up a little bit too much. And of course I'm 6'6", and so I'm a lot taller than most people out there. And so of course for me, I'm pushed up too far, but I think even the average person who's six foot or even 5'11", 5'10", I still feel like you're pushed up a little bit too much. So I feel like Harley could have stepped back the seat a little bit. That being said, the seat does have like a nice little lip on it that keeps you locked into place, like a little ledge. So when you're really gunning it and riding hard, that your body, you get locked into position on the seat. And so that's nice, definitely a race inspired feature on the seating. The bike does not come with passenger pegs. So one more thing that really pigeonholes this bike into being a solo rider, get out there and rip it. Can it be easily converted to something that can be more of a touring oriented bike? Absolutely. You throw a couple pegs on there, you throw a 2-up seat on there. The suspension's already better than the Specials suspension, being the taller shock. The shock, by the way, is the same that you'd find like on a Road King. It's just a taller standard touring shock. I feel like there's more of the shortened, lowered touring shocks than there is the standard shocks nowadays. And so it's almost like the standard height touring shock has become the novelty. It's no longer the other way around, where the shortened shock that made these baggers look like a slammed profile bagger was kind of the novelty, but now the majority have them just because the Specials and the regular street glides and the road glides sell more than just about anything else.
So yeah, another thing, going through the canyons and really testing out the bike is the rear suspension. It's definitely an upgrade from the Specials. You sit a little higher. I did dial in my shock a little bit just to handle through the corners and stuff like that. Really, bike felt planted. It handled really well. I think, honestly speaking, I've scraped once on the street glide and twice on the road glide. And then on the road glide, I didn't even really dial in that suspension because Matt was riding that one. Yeah, just getting familiar with the bike. The chassis felt stable, everything, nothing out of the ordinary or really stood out to me. The bike just really cornered really well and it was confidence inspiring.
And then you've got the styling points, you've got the bronze highlights on the wheels and the lower rocker box covers, which I think is kind of cool. That style can trace its roots back to the Lowrider S. The Lowrider S has been a runaway hit for the Harley-Davidson since the 16 model year when it was introduced on the Dyna chassis. And now we see Harley-Davidson basically shifting or adapting that style and look over to the touring line as well. And I think the inspiration behind that look was West Coast performance-based cruisers. And so the Lowrider S has been that flagship performance-based cruiser in Harley-Davidson's lineup. And really the Lowrider S is pretty much the benchmark for the cruiser industry as far as performance cruisers go. It's probably the best selling, I would imagine. And so kind of cool, Harley-Davidson has taken that styling that they've really solidified and they've set the standard within their lineup of performance cruisers, and they've translated that style over to the Road Glide and the Street Glide ST. So kind of cool to have that bronze look. And in the aftermarket world and the guys that are really building out these bikes and making performance baggers, you see a lot of golds, you see a lot of bronzes. Andrew, built a Road Glide recently where he used a lot of the gold and bronze highlights throughout the bike. And so an industrial look and a lot of the bronze highlights are things that we're seeing in the performance bagger world. And so it's nice to have that styling already in place when you buy one of these, as either a bike that you just ride out of the box or a bike that you use as a starting point to build like an all-in performance cruiser.
yeah, riding it through the canyons. I mean, I got onto the road glide, I've gone on the street glide. Geez, we spent maybe an hour and a half going up and down the canyons and getting really familiar with the bike and kind of where the power band likes to be in aggressive riding through the canyons. It handles so well. I mean, I dialed in the suspension a little bit on the street glide and just got really familiar, heated up the tires and went up and down 6-7 times and just got really familiar with the road and kind of the power band and the meat of where to be and what gear to be in entering and exiting corners. I did notice if I were to own one of these, I feel personally the lower end could breathe a little bit more. I think a torque cam stage 2 in this 117 would absolutely just be nuts, or even stage 1. But for my riding style personally, I like getting in the meat of the power band at any given moment. I think I put about 250, 260 miles of seat time on the street glide. The suspension, the overall aesthetics of the bike, I just really love. Harley did the old school kind of nod back to the old racing days with the font on the tank. It's just really cool.
You know, at 3,500 RPM, which I feel like is where this bike is happiest, you know, like Andrew mentioned, everything is advanced as far as RPM wise. So about 500 RPM advancement on this cam profile is where you want it. On the 107 and the 114, right around 3,000 RPM is kind of your cruising speed. 3,000 RPM in 6th gear, you're doing 80 miles an hour. And on the ST, a nice comfortable cruising speed is about 3,500 RPM. So 3,500 RPM in 6th gear, you're doing 90 miles an hour. The bike is really comfortable at 90 miles an hour. I found myself personally on the freeway a lot in 5th gear, which on my street glide, a 107, I'm always in 6th gear, always on the freeway if I'm doing 65 miles an hour plus. On this thing, I found myself probably 70% of the time in 5th gear. Just because, like Andrew mentioned, the bike likes to be ridden at a higher RPM and you have access to power further along in the RPM spectrum. You know, I feel like on the 107 and even the 114, when you get much above 4,000 RPM, you really start to plateau in power. This 117, you just gradually, you just feel the motor breathing more and more and more, and there's more and more and more power. You know, as much as that needle goes up in the RPM, you feel like you're accessing more and more and more power. I will agree with Andrew in the sense that the power comes on kind of gradually. It's a little bit mushy, especially in the lower RPM range. That's probably the trade-off that you make to have a cam that favors high-end horsepower. You know, just trolling around town, if you're not a guy that gets out on the open highway and does high RPM, high-speed stuff, then the ST probably not the bike for you. Now, it is a touring chassis bike. I don't know why you'd buy a touring chassis bike and just stick to surface streets and stoplight to stoplight, but I suppose some people do. Maybe if you don't live in the United States and the roads aren't as fast and aren't as big and wide and open as they are in the United States. You know, I found myself stoplight to stoplight. The bike does great, but the cam profile, and that's really, I'll mention as well, a lot of people want to talk about, oh, it's 3 cubic inches bigger, you know, from a 114 to 117. Really, the secret sauce in the 117 and the power it delivers is the cam and the tune, and nobody talks about that, but the cam profile, like I already mentioned as well, is really where you access a lot more of the power when you compare it to the 114. So as far as power goes, you've got about 125 foot-pounds of torque on this thing. The horsepower, I believe, is in the high 90s or so. Yeah, you got about 5% more power when you compare it to the 114, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you actually apply that power and the way that the power delivery, you know, operates out on the road, it seems like more than that, and it is a bike that favors more of that high RPM, high speed stuff.
What are you doing?
I'm going straight. Is that okay?
Not gonna block me?
No, I'm not gonna block you. I'll tell you what, you can go first.
No, go ahead, brother.
Okay.
I don't want to race you.
Okay. I don't want to race you either.
He's nice, man.
Thanks, man. It's not mine.
Go ahead, brother.
All right, thanks, bro. Thank you.
A lot of the guys who are more performance oriented and kind of seek more of that performance look and feel, before the ST was even a thing, they were getting specials like myself and putting on the short bags, because You want more of that ground clearance. Not only that, you're running a lot of the performance people run 2-into-1 exhaust, such as myself. On a special, you get that hole in the left saddlebag. So people dropping from the extended bags, short bags, and it was all across the board. It wasn't just Road Glides, it was Street Glides, it was Road King specials. People wanted shorter bags for that. So before Harley bringing out the ST, we were all kind of just doing our own thing as far as doing that. So it really boils down to, if you're in the market for a new touring bike, kind of what's your end goal? Are you more of a canyon carver? Do you like that performance bagger look? Obviously the ST is for you. It's a better base. I'm not saying it's a performance bagger right out of the box, but it is more so than the special or a standard. What do you value more? Do you really want a 117? Do you need that extra horsepower? Or do you like the look of the stretch bags, kind of cruiser, that cruiser look? Or maybe you're not a big fan of the bronze wheels. So, I mean, personally, between a CVO and this, I would personally go with an ST, just because I like the shorter bag performance aspect of it. But a lot of people, like I said, turning their Street Glide or Road Glide specials into this. So Harley really fulfilled the market, and they really listened. They put the ear to the streets, man. I'm really excited for that and see what the future holds.
A couple things I noticed about the bike when I was riding it, you do have Harley-Davidson's heavy breather intake on here, which visually looks awesome. It definitely gives that aesthetic of a real fast, race-oriented bike, which is nice. And you can definitely tell that the bike is sucking plenty of air, like I mentioned. You roll that throttle on and it just continues to breathe more and more and more, and just the horsepower and the torque just continues to increase as the needle goes up in the RPM range. And so that's a nice feature to have on a performance-based engine, a performance-based version of the Milwaukee 8 like we have on the STs here. I will say though, there's a couple times, and I have long legs, and so I can kind of articulate my legs out of the way of it, but I can see how some people might have a hindrance of their leg getting in the way, or the air cleaner getting in the way of their leg, and if you touch it with your shin or something and it's kind of buzzy. And so I can see you're going to want to, as a rider, you're going to want to get on the bike, see how your legs fit with that heavy intake breather, and make sure that you fit okay, because that could be a game killer if you don't fit right with this heavy breather on here. I've had people complain actually that the ergonomics of it just don't fit right, and so you're going to want to get on the bike, make sure your legs fit comfortably around it and that it isn't a hindrance for you. Who I'd recommend this bike to? I think a guy that wants to get a good value for a high-performing engine right out of the box. To take a 114 and make it a 117 that performs on this level, you're now talking about a top-end rebuild. And so, you're talking about, in labor and parts, easily $5,000. So if you like the black and you compare it to a black trim Road Glide special or a Street Glide special, we're talking about $1,500 more. And so if you're someone that favors the performance of this bike and right out of the box, it's a beast. It goes really good. One thing I will mention though is if you do get one of these kits, especially the Gen 2, like Stage 3 or Stage 4 kits, we're talking like the 131 in a Stage 4, we're talking about the 122 in a Stage 3. Well, you're gonna get considerably more power if you get the Screaming Eagle kit, when you compare it to this 117. Even the Generation 1 Screaming Eagle kits that take you to a 117, you're gonna get a lot more power and performance out of those kits than you will a stock out of the box 117. And because of the tune and the compression ratio and a couple other things. Out of the box, for $1,500 more when you compare it to a blacked out Road Glide or Street Glide, this is a really nice value. But the other thing you gotta ask yourself, okay, well, and I always fall back to this in every video, guys, what type of riding do you plan on doing? Do you plan on riding 2-up? Are you more budget oriented? You can get a regular Road Glide or a regular Street Glide, starting at about $22,000, and you're gonna get really the most important stuff that makes a Road Glide and a Street Glide. You're gonna get the 107, and you're not gonna get some of the frills and things like that these bikes have on them, like some of the cosmetic goodies on them. Or are you someone that wants that custom looking, big wheel, big stereo bagger look? You like the stretch bags, you like some of the nice custom features that the specials introduced last year, like the chopped engine guard, the center console that's really sleek on the specials now. So you really have to look at some of these visual cues and these visual things that you can get on some of the other bikes and really how much you favor performance. Because a 107, I personally ride a 107 and I never feel like I'm underpowered down on the road. The 107 will still get you where you want to go. But if you're someone that really wants to rip that throttle and have it pull hard, then you wouldn't want to start thinking about that 114 and that 117. It's cool to see Harley-Davidson follow what's popular right now. We sell a lot of these Road Glide and Street Glide specials, mostly Road Glides, to guys that are no longer doing the big wheel, big stereo thing like we've seen for years on baggers. Now a lot of these guys are really preferring this performance bagger movement and look, and you know, not just the performance that goes along with it, but just the style that goes along with it as well. You got a lot of these industrial looking, like almost like moto inspiration things, T-bars, real grippy, industrial looking spiked foot pegs, you know, things like that. It's definitely, we're moving into a new era now. We're actually not moving into a new era, we are in a new era. The performance bagger thing has been building now for over 5 years now, but it's really coming to, I don't even know if it's at a peak yet. I think we're still, you know, on the climb as far as how popular this thing is going to get. So it's cool to see Harley-Davidson make the first move and move into, you know, this performance bagger, you know, era and atmosphere that we're seeing, and to stylize a bike that is, you know, a good start to what a lot of guys are stylizing their bikes in this performance bagger scene, and to have it, you know, tie into the heritage of the Lowrider S and, you know, Harley-Davidson styling that they've established in their Softail and their dyno world is cool as well. Really cool bike. I'm glad Harley-Davidson has the STs in the lineup this year. I think it's very in touch with what people are wanting right now. And so far we've seen a lot of demand in this bike as well. I think right in the last 2 hours we've sold 2 or 3 of these things actually. This one behind me just sold an hour ago. People are taking to it. You know, people are liking these STs. I can't wait to see the Lowrider ST. It's coming out in April, by the way. I get asked that question a lot. If you have any questions, guys, leave them in the comment section below. I try to get back to everybody that has a good question. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video if we're able to help you out. And we'll see you on the next one. Later, guys.